So you're scrolling through your social media feed and what do you see? Friends arguing about politics, couples fighting over the best TV show, comments going viral because they offended someone. Yeah, we can be a pretty combative species. But honestly, that's putting it lightly. Humans fight for reasons both big and small, right and wrong, petty and principled. But no matter why, as long as there have been humans, there has been war. So the question is, where did it all start? What was the first human war and how did it change history forever? To answer that question, we have to go back more than 800,000 years before the first recorded human civilization, before the days of tanks and fighter jets, machine guns, or even swords. In fact, there wasn't even anything resembling modern humans at this point. It was during a time known as the Paleolithic Age, or the Old Stone Age. This era lasted from roughly 2.6 million years ago until around 12,000 years ago, and it was defined by the use of rudimentary stone tools, hunter-gatherer societies, and most importantly, the development of the human species, Homo sapiens. During this period, the Earth was a vastly different place. The continents were still forming, the climate was generally warmer, and the environment was much more hospitable than it would become in later millennia. And life was still simple for early humans. Sure, they were constantly threatened by carnivorous dinosaurs, saber-toothed cats, giant short-faced bears, dire wolves, and woolly mammoths. But those dangers brought the species together. Early humans had to band together to survive, so they cooperated, shared resources, and developed complex social structures. And then one day something strange happened. Humans began warring with each other. Researchers don't know exactly when the first conflicts between humans arose or why they started. What we do know is that they were happening by as far back as 800,000 years ago. That's right, almost 1,000,000 years ago. Humans were already fighting other humans. So let's paint a picture of what the world looked like back then. The Earth was divided. There was no global society. Instead, our planet was made up of thousands of small, isolated tribes. Each group consisted of only a few dozen people who lived in caves or makeshift shelters. They covered themselves in animal skins, used stone tools, and subsisted on a diet of plants, small animals, and occasionally larger prey that they managed to hunt down. Their days were spent searching for food, their nights huddled around a fire telling stories and keeping an eye out for danger. Most of these tribes were nomadic, meaning they followed their food source as it migrated. When the berries were picked clean, they moved on. When the herds moved south for the winter, so did the humans. Life was solitary, unpredictable, and undeniably tough. But it was also free. There was no government, no societal structure, no rules except those that the humans made for themselves. They were free to roam, free to hunt, and free to do whatever they wanted. But as their numbers grew, so did their needs. And with more mouths to feed, new challenges arose. Suddenly land became scarce, and water holes dried up. And when two groups of humans crossed paths, the result was often deadly. Humans weren't naturally aggressive. After all, we're omnivores, not carnivores. We don't have the natural weapons of predators. We don't chase down our food. We don't kill for sport. But faced with the threat of starvation, humans turned to a new source of protein: other humans. Suddenly, that group of nomadic hunter-gatherers could stay in one place. They could protect their food and claim the land for their own. And as long as they defended it, no one would take it from them. At least that was the theory. In practice, it meant fighting. And I mean really fighting. Not the pickup basketball games we played in high school, not the wrestling matches we watched in college, not the bar fights we got into after a few too many drinks. No, I'm talking about hand-to-hand combat, one human against another. Bare knuckle brawls where the goal was to beat the living daylight out of your opponent and steal his stuff. Okay, so now that we've established that early humans fought, let's talk about how they did it. Did they wage war with plastic swords and body armor? Nope. This wasn't Game of Thrones. These were early humans after all, not wizards. They didn't have magic spells or mutant powers either. Their weapons were simple, rudimentary tools made of bone and stone. Think clubs, spears, knives, axes, maces, and whips. In close combat, they relied on their fists, feet, and teeth. Basically, if you had hands, feet, or a mouth, you were using it to try and take your opponent out. Now you might be thinking, that doesn't sound so bad. Kids fight like that all the time at recess. Well, think again. These weren't kids. These were men. Men driven by desperation, hunger, and the will to survive. They were willing to claw, bite, stomp, and punch their way to victory. And victory was everything. If your tribe won a fight, you got food, water, and shelter. You could expand your territory and protect your people. If you lost, well, you and your tribe might starve to death. So the stakes were high and the competition was fierce. What's worse, the weapons of early humans were surprisingly effective. Sure, they weren't as fancy as modern weapons, but they were sharp, sturdy, and deadly. Take the spear, for example. Early humans took long, sturdy bones, sharpened one end to a fine point, and hardened them in a fire. Voila, a spear. They used these weapons to hunt wild animals, but they could also use them to great effect against other humans. A single well-placed thrust could end a life. But as humans evolved and migrated across the globe, so did their weapons. They learned to use rocks as hammers, sharpened sticks as javelins, and animal bones as swords. They even figured out how to make crude arrows and rudimentary bows and arrows. As their weapons became more advanced, so did their fighting techniques. They learned to fight in groups, to flank their opponents, and to use their environment to their advantage. They even developed basic battle plans and strategies. It was brutal, violent, and utterly effective. So what does all this tell us about the first human wars? For starters, it shows us that humans have always been willing to fight, to kill, and to destroy in order to survive. It also shows us that we're incredibly adaptable, resourceful, and determined. Early humans didn't have the benefit of modern technology, but they were able to develop sophisticated weapons and tactics that allowed them to thrive. They were also fiercely independent and self-reliant. They had no government or formal leadership, yet they were able to organize themselves and fight as a unit. Archaeologists have uncovered evidence of these ancient battles in the form of skulls split by stone axes, arrowheads embedded in bones, and other artifacts. These discoveries have helped us piece together a grim picture of life in the Paleolithic age. While studying these relics, researchers discovered something even more interesting. Most of the injuries found on human remains were defensive wounds. They suggested that early humans weren't killing each other in large-scale battles. Instead, they were raiding each other's camps in the middle of the night, stealing their food, and running away. Some tribes even kept slaves, taking prisoners during raids and forcing them to work for them. It was a dark time, a violent time, but it was also a necessary time. Humans had to fight to survive, and in doing so, they created the foundation for future wars. The first human wars were small-scale affairs, but they taught early humans valuable lessons about cooperation, strategy, and psychology. They also instilled in humans a deep-seated fear of outsiders. After all, who knows what a stranger might be capable of? As time went on, humans carried these lessons and fears with them, and as they developed more advanced weapons and technologies, their wars became bigger, bloodier, and more destructive. So remember the next time you hear a news report about a distant conflict, or read about a politician calling for war, that it all started with the first humans who turned their tools against each other. It started with the need to survive, the will to dominate, and the desire for power. And it's been happening ever since. Hey, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and subscribe for more videos like this.